Ever clicked on one of those online product listings? You're scrolling through the pictures, the bullet points, and you just wonder, is there something I'm missing?
Oh, absolutely. That one little detail may be buried down the page. That tells you if it's really the right thing for you or if there's, a catch.
Exactly. It feels a bit like detective work sometimes, doesn't it? Trying to piece together the official story and what actual users are saying.
Right. And a page like that, just a single product listing, it's actually a fascinating source. Yeah. You get the marketing spin, the hard specs, and then often the really blunt feedback from people who've actually used it.
Yeah, it's a gold mine if you know how to read between the lines. Mm-hmm. And that's pretty much what we're doing today. We're taking one specific phone, the CMF Phone 1, and we're just looking at its Amazon product page. That's our source material.
Just the one page? Mm-hmm. So the features they list, the tech specs, any info on like protection plans.
And crucially, the customer reviews and the Q&A section on that page. That's it.
Gotcha. So the goal is to pull out the key insights from just that listing.
Yep. We want to give you a shortcut, really, to understanding the CMF Phone 1, what the page says its strengths are, but also the important nuances, the potential drawbacks that this specific page reveals.
Okay, sounds good. Let's unpack it.
All right, so straight off the bat, looking at this Amazon page, what's the main story they're telling about the CMF Phone 1?
Well, right at the top, they're really pushing performance and efficiency. They highlight the processor, the MediaTek Dimensity 7300 5G.
Okay.
And they make a point of saying it's built on a 4mm process.
Right.
That 4mm, it refers to the size of the transistors, basically. Smaller usually means more power efficient.
Right, so better performance without killing the battery, potentially.
Exactly. And it comes with 8 GB of RAM, but they also talk up this RAM booster thing.
Yeah, I saw that. Using storage as extra RAM.
Mm-hmm. Lets you use up to 8 GB of your storage space as virtual RAM, so you could get like up to 16 GB total for multitasking.
So they're definitely positioning it as, pretty capable, especially for what it likely costs. And battery life seems like a big focus too.
Oh, definitely. It lists a 5,000 milliamp battery. That's a pretty standard large size these days.
And they make a pretty bold claim about it, right?
Yeah, up to 2 days on a single charge.
Yeah.
Which, always depends on usage, but that's the claim.
Sure.
And the fast charging is there too. 33 watts. They say 50% charge in just 20 minutes.
Okay, that's reasonably quick.
And they even mention something called battery health technology, smart charging modes to try and make the battery last longer over its lifespan, which is a nice touch, actually.
Yeah, you don't always see that highlighted. Okay, what about cameras? Always a huge selling point.
Right. The page focuses on the main rear camera being 50 megapixels.
50 MP.
And they specifically mention a dedicated portrait sensor and an f1.8 aperture.
Okay, f1.8. That's about light gathering, right? Lower number, better in low light.
Generally, yes. Wider opening lets more light in, helps with low light and getting that blurry background effect bokeh.
Gotcha. And the front camera.
16 megapixels. But they seem to lean quite heavily on the software side of things. They talk about a TrueLens Engine 2.0 for computational photography.
Right, using software to improve the image.
Exactly. And interestingly, they highlight Ultra XDR, which they say was co-developed with Google.
So leveraging Nothing's connection there and Google's imaging tech.
Seems like it, combining Nothing's software with Android tech, specifically aimed at improving lighting and detail in tricky shots. There's also an AI vivid mode mentioned, to make colors pop.
So it sounds like the strategy is getting good photo results through processing, maybe more than just raw hardware power, making the most of what they have.
That seems like a fair assessment based on how they're presenting it here, yeah. They're definitely highlighting the software.
And speaking of software, it's running Nothing OS version 2.6, according to the page.
Right. And they also mentioned ChatGPT integration.
Oh, yeah. How does that work?
Well, the page points out it specifically works with Nothing ecosystem earbuds when they're connected to a compatible CMF or Nothing phone, like this one. So it's a bit specific.
Okay, so not just a general OS feature, but tied to their earbuds. Got it. All right, so we've covered the core tech specs they're pushing. What about the physical design, the extras mentioned on the page?
Well, the listing gives the basics. It's black, comes with a case, weighs around 200 grams, standard stuff.
Okay.
But what really stood out actually came from a customer review that Amazon highlighted right there on the page.
Oh, interesting. What did it say?
This reviewer pointed out that it doesn't have the flashy glyph lights you see on the main Nothing phones.
Right, the light patterns on the back.
Yeah. They actually appreciated the clean and simple look without them. But the cooler part was they mentioned you might be able to swap the back cases.
Swap the actual back. How?
They mention different colors or maybe backs with added functions like a kickstand or a card holder attached with, get this, 4 real and functional screws and 1 knob screw.
Whoa. Actual visible screws. That you can undo. That's different.
It really is. It sounds almost modular in a small way. Very much fits that CMF and nothing vibe of trying to be distinct, letting you personalize it.
Yeah, that's definitely a unique selling point if it's true. The page also mentions protection plans, right? Standard add-ons.
Yep. Asurion plans covers accidental damage drops, spills right from day one, and then hardware failures after the manufacturer's warranty runs out.
Okay.
Different options, monthly plans too. They lay out the repair or replacement process, mentioning service fees. Pretty typical stuff for those add-on plans.
Right. Okay, so we've got the headline features, the design notes. Now let's really dig into those critical details. The stuff that might be, buried a bit deeper, but could be a total deal breaker. And for anyone looking at this page in the US, that carrier compatibility section seems absolutely vital.
This is the big one. It's right there on the project description, but you could miss it if you're just skimming. It explicitly says CDMA is not supported.
Okay, so older tech, but still relevant for some carriers or areas. And I go here. What about the big ones, AT&T and Verizon?
Right. For AT&T, it gets tricky. The page says you're limited to 4G and 3G. No 5G support on AT&T.
No 5G on AT&T.
Yeah. And maybe even more importantly, crucial features like VoLTE voice over LTE and voice over Wi-Fi. They won't work either on AT&T, according to this page.
Wait, no VoLTE? Doesn't that mean making calls could be an issue on their modern network?
It absolutely could be, yeah. VoLTE is pretty essential now for calls over 4G.
Yeah.
So not having it is a major limitation. The page lists the supported LTE bands for AT&T as 4, 5, and 66, but explicitly no 5G bands.
Okay, that's a serious limitation for AT&T users. And Verizon sounds even worse based on the description.
It does. The listing uses pretty strong language here. It says, quote, compatibility with Verizon is very limited. And then we do not recommend using CMF Phone 1 with Verizon.
They straight up say don't use it with Verizon.
Pretty much. It says Verizon 5G and CDMA networks aren't supported at all. Only 4G might work.
Might work?
Yeah. And it even says you might need to call Verizon and get them to manually add the phone's IMEI number, that unique ID to their system before it'll even connect to their 4G network.
Wow. That's not just a small compatibility issue. That's a huge red flag directly from the seller.
Absolutely. So calling it unlocked is technically true, but that unlock comes with some massive asterisks, especially in the US, depending on your carrier. You have to read that section carefully.
Definitely. Which leads us perfectly into the customer reviews on this same page. Now, overall, the phone has a 4.5 star rating from 82 reviews, which sounds pretty good.
Yeah, quite positive overall.
So what are people actually saying? Does the feedback line up with the official description, especially on the good stuff?
Well, a lot of the positive feedback really backs up that value proposition. The AI summary of reviews and individual ones often mention value for money.
Okay.
People call it a great deal, mention excellent performance for the price. The design gets praised a lot, beautiful, aesthetics, the screen looks nice.
And the Nothing OS.
Yeah, people seem to like it. Described as spectacular, slick, fluid. Fast charging is confirmed as super fast by users, and the general responsiveness gets called smooth.
Battery life too.
That's another common positive. Some users specifically say they're getting at least 2 days, and setting it up is called easy.
Okay, so for a lot of buyers, it sounds like the core experience, good value, nice design, smooth software, good battery, it really lands.
It seems so for many.
But where do the reviews maybe show a different side? Or, crucially, do they reinforce those warnings we just talked about?
This is where reading the actual reviews becomes so important. While some do praise the camera, I saw one review that was a bit more measured, saying it works fine, not something to rave about either way. So maybe temper expectations there slightly.
Okay.
But the carrier issue?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that comes up loud and clear in the reviews, strongly backing up that warning in the description.
So users are confirming the problems.
Definitely. One user who actually switched from an iPhone 15 Pro Max explicitly says, and I'm quoting here, in the USA, do not use Verizon at all. AT&T is second worst. Anyone else that doesn't use either of those two companies' towers work perfectly fine. Like T-Mobile, as I can get 5G and 4G LTE nearly everywhere.
That's incredibly specific and matches the warning exactly. T-Mobile, okay. Verizon bad, AT&T iffy.
Exactly. And there's another review titled Beautiful Phone, Terrible Network Coverage, where the user says they missed the Verizon warning and had major problems getting it to work reliably, even after trying to get the IMEI added.
So that real-world feedback from multiple people on the same page, it makes that carrier warning basically impossible to ignore if you're in the US.
Completely. What other details pop up in the reviews? Maybe things the main listing doesn't really shout about.
Good question. Are there missing features people notice?
Yes. Several reviewers explicitly point out there's no NFC.
Ah, no NFC, so no tap to pay with Google Pay or similar services.
Correct. That's a feature many people just expect now, and it's confirmed missing here by users. Also, the lack of a standard headphone jack is mentioned.
Right. That's also confirmed in the fine print of the specs usually.
And one review mentioned the speaker being a bit weak and having trouble connecting to some specific Sony headphones.
So maybe some minor audio quirks or compatibility issues with certain accessories?
Potentially, yeah. It's just one comment, but worth noting.
Yeah.
Also, interestingly, one user mentioned that demanding games, they use Genshin Impact as an example, do lag.
Okay, so that tempers the excellent performance comments a bit. It's good for the price, but maybe not a high-end gaming machine despite the RAM booster.
Exactly. It suggests there are limits. And there's one more tiny contradiction I noticed just within this single source page.
Oh, yeah.
The official specs list a 6.67-inch Super AMOLED display, which sounds great.
Right, AMOLED usually means better colors, deeper blacks.
Yeah. But one of the customer reviews described the screen as a 60 Hz LCD.
Huh. AMOLED versus LCD, and maybe a standard refresh rate versus something higher. That's quite different.
It is. Now, it could be a mistake in the review, or maybe a misunderstanding, or maybe even a regional variation, but it's a conflict within the single Amazon page itself.
That screen detail is actually a perfect example, isn't it? How digging into both the official description and the user feedback gives you this much richer, sometimes slightly messy picture.
Exactly. You see the manufacturer's claims, the specs, and then the lived reality, or at least the perceived reality, from users, all side by side.
Yeah. This whole exercise, just focusing on this one Amazon page, really shows how much vital info is packed in there if you actually look closely. It goes way beyond just the headline features.
You have to dig into the technical details, look for those crucial warnings like the carrier compatibility that might be kind of hidden.
And then cross-reference that with the customer reviews to see what's validated, what new issues pop up, what features are confirmed missing, how performance feels in the real world.
It really turns what looks like a simple shopping page into a pretty valuable resource for making an informed decision. You start to see the compromises they likely made to hit that price point and what the actual experience is like for people.
Okay, so let's try and sum up the story of the CMF Phone 1 based only on this Amazon listing. What have we learned?
Well, the listing presents it as a really strong value proposition, right?
Yeah.
You get solid core specs, that modern, efficient MediaTek processor, apparently great battery life with decent fast charging.
A camera system that relies heavily on software like Ultra XDR, the whole Nothing OS experience, which users seem to like.
And a distinctive design, potentially with some customization options. And the customer reviews on the page largely back up that feeling of good value, good design, smooth software.
Right. But, and this is a huge but, this same page clearly flags some major limitations that you absolutely need to know about before buying.
Definitely. Top of the list, without a doubt, is that US carrier compatibility problem, especially the very limited, not recommended Verizon support and the issues with AT&T lacking 5G and VoLTE. And users confirmed experiencing these exact issues.
Yeah, that's critical. The page also confirms, and users mention, missing features that many expect: no NFC for payments, no headphone jack.
And then there were those smaller potential issues raised in reviews, like maybe a weak speaker or issues with specific headphones, or that it might struggle with very high-end games, and that little mystery about the screen type.
So this deep dive really underscores how a product listing isn't just features. It holds clues about who the phone is actually for, what trade-offs you're making, and what real users think, warts and all. Looking at all this, pulled just from one page, what really stands out to you?
For me, it's that stark contrast. The potential for great value on one hand, hitting a lot of the right notes for the price, but then these really specific, potentially show-stopping limitations on the other, like the carrier support. It's not a universal recommendation based on this page alone.
Yeah, definitely not. Thinking about how this single page presents the CMF Phone 1 balancing those good specs with these very clear, sharp limitations like carrier support or no NFC, it does raise a bigger question, doesn't it?
What's that?
Considering everything we pulled just from this one Amazon listing, How does a phone like this, the CMF Phone 1, challenge our usual ideas about what makes a good phone, especially when seemingly small details like which network it works best on or whether you can tap to pay can actually have such a huge impact on whether the phone is even usable or practical for you? How important are those details in the final decision?